Hi everyone, Nemo here. It is a Saturday night. How odd, how unexpected. But we already have some people in the chat. We have some people joining us. We're here because the church is trying desperately to make it look as though they're growing. And they do that in multiple different ways. Before, they've kind of got rid of stakes and then renamed them and said, oh, look, we got a new stake. Sometimes they will combine wards and say a new ward has been created. But now they're just trying to get things as close as possible to uniformity around the world. And then once they get there, who knows what they'll do next. But to pontificate and chat, I have my illustrious panel of guests that we've missed and no one's seen in a while. And they're all going to say hey, but they are muted. So unmute yourselves, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, hello.
Oh, it's a Saturday night. Thank you.
Christmas.
Yes, Ruth's being very festive up there with her Christmas tree. I appreciate that. I really like that.
Dang it, she's the winner. I've got a Christmas cactus in the background.
Oh, do you?
That is so Peter Blakely.
What is a Christmas? Oh no, hang on. My mum has one of those.
Yeah,
there you
they're
go.
gorgeous. It's kind of
blooms
now.
once a year around Christmas time, right?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
You can tell this is going to be all killer, no filler, because we're already talking about Peter's Christmas cactus.
Not a euphemism.
You're in for a treat tonight. Because, as the thumbnail says, can this save Mormonism? Can the church save Mormonism by putting a load of X's on the map? Because I think that those X's on the map are indicative of what's going to happen. What's going to happen to the church in the coming years. So for those that don't know, we received this information. It was distributed to, obviously, just men, just penis holders, as Ruth would call them. But it gets leaked, as it always does, and we're able to look at the latest tactic. So, do I want to read it? Who do I get to read it? Who would like to read this?
I do not volunteer.
Or Peter, would you like to read it? Are you able to?
I will try.
Okay.
I will enlarge the screen. Here we go. Yes. 2 general authorities, general officers, area 70, stake mission and district presidencies, bishoprics and branch presidencies. Men with willies all. Updated policy for creating or changing unit boundaries. Dear brothers and sisters, a worldwide uniform standard has been established for creating new units or changing stake and ward boundaries. A new participation measure will be added to the boundary proposal process to assist in evaluating unit strength when boundary updates are being considered. Leaders should use the new minimum requirements outlined in the attached document when considering boundary proposals. General Handbook Serving in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as well as the boundary proposal system, which can be accessed through Leader and Clark resources, will be updated to reflect these changes in early 2023. I feel a bit sad reading this list of the First Presidency, because they'll probably all be dead by next episode. Russell M. Nelson, Dallin Oakes, and Henry B. Eyring. Rest in peace.
Yes. I just want to say welcome to some of the people in the chat who are here for the first time. Carrie B, welcome. First time catching Nemo live, apparently, so hi. Tell me you're in a corporation masquerading as a church without telling me you're in a corporation masquerading as a church. They have participation measures, and they have they have policies and tick lists that assist in evaluating unit strength. So, how well their branches are doing, the branches of their business are doing.
If we were retail, it would be talking about footfall, wouldn't we?
Oh, yes, that's a really good way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but footfall, okay, so that makes sense, right? But what counts as personhood
high heels.
in the Latter-day Saint mind of creating a word is fascinating. So I'm looking.
Let's wait to lift the lid.
Hang on. Jacob Schramm just puts me really interested in the comments I didn't pick up on. To dear all male leadership, and then it says, "Dear brothers and sisters." So, are they giving women priesthood offices now, or are they recognising trans women in leadership?
Identify as female. I think that's what they're going for.
Well spotted, Jacob.
That's a very good spot.
I mean, you would think, yes, but it's very generous. It's all information is going to be passed through that male priesthood line, and so this is so that you can read word for word from the document, and your councils and women can be informed without feeling like they have not been, even though they have not been. No women will receive that email.
No.
So,
Hi, Matthew Burton in the chat. I see you. Thank you for being here and coming to your first live stream. You're likely to be disappointed. I'm not feeling very well tonight, but I have these lovely people to perk me up.
We bring it.
Cheer me on. So let's go to the next page, unless there's anything else we want to say about this page. This is just your standard boilerplate. It comes from the Office of the First Presidency, and as Peter said, they may not be around for very long. Peter, please. Or actually, no, there's 3 pages. So Jane, can you read this one? I'm going to get Jane to do this one, and then Ruth to do the final one.
I don't. Can I not? So I am not going to be able to read this.
Okay, if you want to pass it on to Peter, you can.
Tagging Peter in.
Okay,
yeah,
Peter.
do it, Peter.
You can make the screen go.
Do you want me to make it? Do you want me to?
Joe, sorry, am I doing this?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go for it. Right. A participation measure will be added to the boundary proposal system to assist leaders in identifying members who participate in a meaningful way and to help evaluate the strength of a boundary proposal. A member is considered as participating if he or she meets one or more of the following criteria, one or more. Pays a full or partial tithe, most important one, top of the list, holds a current temple recommend, has a calling in the church, is a new member attending sacrament meeting in the first year of membership, is enrolled in seminary for youth only. Any proposals that have been initiated or submitted will be updated to reflect the new requirements in January the 1st, 2024.
Okay, we're going to stop there. Before we go any further, because I want to go back to that last one, because we're chattering nonsense. This is to general authorities, general officers, area 70s. Chloe Munzer, thank you for being awake and alert. Of course, the Relief Society, General Relief Society, and General Young Women's presidents are general officers. They are included in the list, so they're dear brothers and sisters. Look at us finding snark out of nowhere.
I love
thank you very much,
Not
Chloe.
steak ones.
Well done.
Thank you.
But that doesn't mean a single woman in the British Isles will receive this.
Well, we'll get back to how women don't really matter according to this document later. A couple of things. First of all, is a member is considered as participating. So participating in church. What does that mean to participate in church? I would have thought participating in church would mean that you attend church, you take of the sacrament, and you're involved in the ward community in some meaningful way, in uplifting your brothers and sisters around you. That's what I would think. Ray Allen saying in the comments, I prophesy that Nemo will outlive President Rusty Nelson. Not the way I'm feeling tonight, Ray.
No, he's a goner. Just donate while you can.
It's a bit of a 50-50.
Yeah, might not make it.
He's a weak little one. He's very, very little.
I am. I spend too much time indoors now.
Like Tiny Tim.
Oh,
yeah,
let's
like
get
a
him through Christmas.
Victorian.
Crikey.
Yeah, like the Victorian child kept in the attic. Look at him. Send him some donations for Christmas so that he has some. Yeah. Anyway,
we've been watching Harry Potter today.
Nice.
So you said, Nemo, the when you were talking about the participation thing. Okay, so I got quite excited actually when I was reading the first paragraph initially, and it talked about, because you brought this in, people who contribute in meaningful ways.
Yeah, who participate in a meaningful way.
That sounded brilliant. That's really exciting. That could be people from any walk of life who don't even necessarily define themselves as Mormon or Latter-day Saint in any way, but have some kind of interest in the church, scholarly even. If you are contributing, if you're interested, and supporting the mission or the work of Christ, even, never mind just the church. Wouldn't that be wonderful if that was such an inclusive, open, we are considering everyone's needs who wants to be in this space. But then, we jump to some key performance indicators again.
Well, yeah, because so what it means, this is the crux of the point, and I don't think it's wrong of us to really kind of get in on this, is that what the church considers to be meaningful participation in the church, this is what the church considers to be meaningful participation, that you pay your tithing, you pay your money, or you hold a temple recommend, which involves paying tithing. So those two, they link. You are doing work for the church by way of a calling, or you're a new member and so you're allowed to slack off a little bit, and the first 12 months is free, as people are saying in the chat. Or if you're a youth, you're enrolled in seminary. So if you're a youth doing anything other than being enrolled in seminary, you are not meaningfully participating in the church.
See, I interpret it differently to
Go
that.
on,
I read those things and I thought they are the barest minimums to allow them to count them. Whereas in the past, they didn't have any metric. Now they've come up with this metric. But even down to, particularly outside of the US, I think, where new members, the sort of churn on new membership and on investigators is huge. I think just being able to say, all we need to be able to count them as participating is that they were a new member and they came to sacrament meeting. It's very woolly. It doesn't say they've got to come for 3 months or 6 months or the full 12 months. It's we can count them if they come to a sacrament meeting. That's how I interpret that, which means that you could have some poor ward clerk scratching their head going, okay, technically we qualify because we've had a big amount of new investigators come in and then we never see them again. But does that really count? And this enrolled in seminary, again, not participating in seminary, not even attending seminary, but just enrolled, which just could take a bishop sticking everyone's name down on a list and thinking, right, that gets us over the line.
Right. Yeah.
And then not a full tithe payer. It can be a partial tithe payer. Just stick something in an envelope. We're happy. We'll count you.
Interesting. Okay. So I think there's a mixture there. Then this shows what their priorities are, but at the same time, they've basically made it so that it's almost impossible not to qualify.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peter, your thoughts? I can hear.
One of my sort of big moments this year in sort of, as you deconstruct and reconstruct your relationship with the church, is someone simply pointing out that there's nothing about the temple ordinances in the Book of Mormon. So if the Book of Mormon has the fullness of the gospel, and it was restored right at the beginning, the requirements for being considered part of the community of the people of God in the Book of Mormon are simply, are you willing to mourn with those that mourn? Have you been baptized? Are you faithful? There's nothing there about having to be ordained to any priesthood. There is nothing about anything to do with temple ordinances, really. They worship at the temple, but in the old Jewish system, that was just sort of sacrificing some animals to repent. You turn up at church, in effect. So they, all of this criteria, or all of them, are additional to what the Book of Mormon says is required for going to heaven, to be saved.
All that stuff down at the waters of
the
Mormon.
celestial kingdom. Yeah. They are saved, they're redeemed, they're going to, they're doing enough. It's happened.
But that isn't
we are
meaningful.
So used in the church. Yes. But yeah. And so in the church, we're so used to all these add-ons that have been fully integrated into this idea that now, but you're not exalted, or whatever. You have to do all the temple stuff and all these other requirements and be on the covenant path with exactness. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's nothing that in the scriptures from Jesus that are canonized in our church that is saying, unless you start to count section 132 of the Doctrine and Covenants, but the Book of Mormon, its message is none of these things matter.
And then interestingly, there's nothing.
They're not the requirement.
There's nothing about Jesus here. To participate in a meaningful way in the church does not involve Christ, apparently. But I guess these are far more. These are metrics that can be taken from the church system.
And this is
these are metrics,
something you can count, isn't it? Essentially, they want to be able to say yes or no to a decision about a ward or a stake, and they need something to be able to count. They're being counters. That's what it comes down to. And this is something measurable. People's testimony, people's feelings of faith, whether they've been baptized or not, do not count. What matters is, or excommunicated in your case, Peter. What matters is, are you paying your tithing? Have you enrolled in this program of the church? It's just something that it can actually count, can't they? Because there's a form been filled out somewhere.
Yeah, Jane, what are
Are
your
you
thoughts
patient
on
and forgiving?
what it means to participate in a meaningful way?
I feel like I consistently come back to one of the things that made me buy into the church, and probably what keeps me in this what could be an incredibly exciting space, which is sort of continuing revelation, to be able to respond to needs, to not have to have so much bureaucracy. And I love that what we're not hearing is we need so many temple recommend holders in order to have a particular size of congregation. I think what's ended up happening is because we made changes that became so bureaucratic, it does take the faith. And I know there's going to be a party line, which is that these actions grow out of faith or investment in the future. I get that. However, wouldn't it be wonderful to have churches because we can afford to build them, that where they exist, we can respond to what local needs look like. The thing that they keep saying over and over again in the handbook. So where there are members where rurality is a huge issue, where people are having to travel long distances, where there is a particularly aging population, where sort of inner city needs, transitory needs, all of these things, well, actually, we could do something quite innovative there. And these indicators have just sort of tied everyone's hands. And I think what I can see happening is we're going to see the church goes in very successful in certain ways for a limited period of time. Church moves out, left to get on with it, and the church just dies in that area because, we know in that first year there's going to be some kind of activity. People are going to come to sacrament in that first year. It's what happens after that first year. So it can sort of capitalize on growth in areas like Africa, where are we starting to see that slow down already? Is
not from
know.
reports I have from.
Right.
So I've got a friend who's currently on a mission out in Kenya, out in the Kenya Nairobi mission, and they said it's still baptisms a week type stats out there.
Which isn't.
I suggest though that just on that
Peter.
point though that. Yeah, they announced, is it 36 new missions for
I want to get to that,
start next year. None of them are new areas. So maybe within some of the African missions that's happening, but they don't have the confidence in the number of missionaries in the future to actually open new parts of Africa or India, which is a vast country that they can operate in, and they have very, very little presence there still.
I think there's a lot of...
I would suggest that no, they're not having enough growth to justify starting new.
So I wouldn't say it's slowed down, but it's certainly not taken off either necessarily, or it's not increased.
Or not enough missionaries.
Yeah.
Not enough.
Well,
missionaries
because the thing about the
to run
missionaries,
them.
though, is just before I get back to Jane, I want to say that there's been some commentary around the missionaries saying that that essentially what a lot of this is the church artificially bigging up the numbers, saying, oh, isn't this brilliant, when you've had COVID where a lot of people haven't gone on missions and now they are going. So just in the same way as when they dropped the age requirement for sisters, they got this big influx, that now this big number of missionaries that's bigger than before the pandemic, isn't bigger than their highest ever total, which was something like 85,000. They've not hit that, and is going to then recede again. So that's why I think another thing about these being in existing areas is you'll see some of these missions will close again. They'll shrink back in. Sorry, Jane, carry on.
I'm looking for that innovation, I guess is what I'm saying. I remember several years ago here in the UK, way before COVID had happened, and what we're seeing is churches broadly, not Mormon churches, definitely not, but churches broadly leading the way on food bank, on poverty, on heating poverty, and that type of thing. And initially what I would sort of see was a few churches kind of jumping on the sort of bandwagon a little bit and thinking, oh, okay, this is how we can get growth in this village church. If we have a food bank, if we're filling needs in this way, then it's going to build relationships and people will want to come to church. And what they realized as they started to do this work, and the volume of people who were coming through food banks, they realized that actually we need to look at church differently, that the food bank itself is church, that Christ is there doing that work more than, possibly what is happening on Sundays. And one of the things that we see as well is that on Sundays, people who are relying on food support and are homeless don't have anywhere to go on Sundays because all of the Christians are worshipping in church. And it's, I mean, that is not what we all bought into, right? So we have these possibilities that where there are areas with high poverty, with areas of the UK which are sort of where gang culture is an issue, where people need a place to go that is safe, and that's what we could have been doing. That would have been innovative and people would have been excited by that. But no, we have to bring it back to, well, what's actually going to continue to make a sustainable, contributing church that actually doesn't do anything more than ends up closing again in a few years because people bugger off.
There's a fine line. I think there's 2 points I'd want to make off the back of that. There's a fine line between being fiscally responsible and being money grabbing, and the church often finds itself on the wrong side of that because, of course, they can't just spend all the cash they have, because if they do, what are they going to operate with? Running a church does cost money, so a lot of apologists will try and lean into that, but there's a fine line between that and then just hoarding wealth. So that's the problem the church has. And this here, again, what it means to participate meaningfully, certainly, because again, this is all framed within the context of opening new units, opening new stakes, opening new wards. And it'd be interesting to have a discussion about whether this is going to be retroactively applied to units, because that would have a massive change on the UK landscape. But I'm not so sure, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I think that I slightly lost my train of thought there. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is that framed within this idea of how do we work out whether we're going to open a stake or a ward, what the church views as meaningful is how these people give to the church and what these people do in these key indicators of are they adding to the coffers by paying their tithing? Do they have a calling, meaning that they're willing to do the jobs necessary to make the church run? Or are they a new member because eventually they will get there, hopefully? Or are they a youth that we're currently indoctrinating through seminary so that they will then go on and perform services
I know
for the
that
church?
I'm harping on about this a little bit, but
Please harp away.
But one of the things that we saw happening when service missions were being introduced and that it was something that younger people could access, that was something that people find really inspiring. What if I don't want to proselytize? What if there is something different that can fulfill a need in the world that is really meaningful, and it isn't going to be faith-based bums on seats?
Yeah.
Ruth is one of the people who for whom COVID was the game changer. None of this is responding to what in my opinion, is responding in a meaningful way to what we saw happening in COVID, where actually people are looking to worship in different ways that is meaningful. And that's why I feel so depressed that, oh, you're talking about meaningful. What could that be? People who want to worship digitally, people who want to worship through service, people who just want to, a church without walls that is able to respond to needs of its members and the wider community. And what you want to do is just have numbers, and we're just changing how we count them. Come on.
Even down to the fact that we're still glued onto this framework of it's got to be wards, and you only go to your congregation of your ward, and you've got to have a stake, and you only attend within that ward, and then within that stake, and you serve within that capacity. Not to have the ability to go, as we wanted to do at one point, do you know what? My parents live 20 minutes away and they're elderly. I'm going to go on a Sunday and be with my family.
Right.
Or my son at that point lived a couple of hours away. On a Sunday, we're going to go and worship with him. And that's okay because we're at church and we're worshipping. I think the fact that we're still, it just smacks of corporation, it smacks of retail, doesn't it? That we've got to have we're an unpaid, but we are a workforce as members, and they need to have some sort of measurable metrics whereby they can say, we've got enough in this area now, and we know they're going to be locked into working within that area, because that's how we do things around here. We can set up a ward or whatever stake. I do think when we actually dig into the detail of the numbers and how they've previously been and how they're now changing, there's some really interesting anomalies in there. But I do think that a lot of this is linked to the growth that's going on in places like Africa and other parts of the world that are not. I mean, the downturn in the UK is astronomical, isn't it? I joined as a convert, and that pattern, yes, missionaries are still going out, but the downturn has been incredibly fast and catastrophic to membership. In other parts of the world, these metrics actually will help them to justify the creation of wards and stakes, and so they're just putting some actual numbers associated with that so that they can justify why they're doing what they're doing in those areas. But I really would like to get into the details. I think quite interesting,
because I think we're seeing a seesaw here where it will help the developing church in the developing world,
church and allow America and Canada and certainly developed Europe to sort of slide in the opposite direction.
Peter, would you like to read the new numbers, please?
Sure. Just a quick point before that, where we've got this sense of the church moving into the modern age and offering alternatives. There's been a big push for young missionaries to have to do service missions if they want to, which Jane mentioned, I think. But can I just point out the stats on that are catastrophic as well. Between 2018, so well before COVID, and 2022, the number of young missionaries serving service missions has fallen by 21.4%. It's been relentlessly dropping, even with this huge push and much greater awareness of it. The actual numbers serving has fallen. It hasn't proven to be the engine for getting more young people out there that we thought. So the data is always the key, isn't it?
Well, I have theories about that, but yeah.
Charles Mendeley just puts something really interesting in the chat just before you read the numbers. More missions basically means you need more senior couples to become mission leaders, and weren't the church just begging for senior missionaries?
Yeah. Right.
So they've set this up and gone, no, we need to create more missions, rather than just perhaps reorganizing the mission structure to allow the current missions to deal with a larger influx of missionaries, because I think it's purely administrative.
People.
It's purely how many people.
Our mission is short of people.
According to our numbers, how many people can a mission president look after? And they've gone, it's going to exceed that in these places because this is where we're sending people, because obviously it's revelation, nothing at all to do with where we think we're going to be targeting new converts. That's why we've created tons of new African missions, but none in the UK for a little while. Even though they killed my mission, which is very sad.
The mission I served the mission I served in is exemplary of this. The Florida Tallahassee mission, which took in North Florida, South Alabama, and at the time a county each of Georgia and Mississippi, just to make it properly deep south. They closed the Tallahassee mission in 2019. President Nelson announced in 2020 a temple for Tallahassee, and Tallahassee is now back on this list of 36 missions they're going to open. So the prophet who sees round corners can't see 3 or 4 years ahead the fact that he's about to reopen the mission he closed. It's all but in our mission, we haven't got enough missionaries. My ward was without missionaries for about 2 years. It was hell because there was no growth at all. It's hopeless. I don't know why. So here's my interpretation. If they're not opening new areas in any of these missions, they're just subdividing previous ones or resurrecting dead ones. They know that this glut of missionaries is not going to last, even though they put a 5-minute video out with Cook and others saying this is the great resurgence of young people responding to President Nelson's call to be missionaries.
And gather
They know,
Zion.
you can tell by where they put them, that this isn't going to be permanent increase. But they didn't need to do that, because there have been steadily falling numbers of missionaries. Missions are crying out within their existing boundaries and with their existing leadership for more missionaries. They are having to leave congregations without any missionaries serving in them. So there was no need whatsoever to create any of these new missions. None of it. All they needed to do is put the very few thousand extra missionaries and scatter them across these missions. It would only be like 1 or 2 each. So the only reason that they've made this big announcement is propaganda. And they're going to mess people around, because they're going to have to close these missions again in a year or two. Just like they've, I'm just waiting for Florida to Tallahassee to close again, because it's delusional. The only reason for doing this is not because of real growth, not because of a sustained growth in the number of missionaries serving, and they could have put all of those missionaries in existing missions
Peter,
without needing new missions.
Walk us through
It's the fake growth narrative. So
walk us through how they're doing it at a
about
stake
too.
level, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we go. In the past, there were different requirements or thresholds for having a stake between the USA and Canada and other countries. So originally, a total number of a total number of members in the USA and Canada would have to be 3,000 in order to form a stake, and in other countries 1,900. So 2/3 of that. Now they've got a standard which is just slightly more than the old other countries' total, which is
And this is just
2,000.
members on the books, right? They don't have to be active. They don't have to go to
Yes.
church. They just have to be geographically within that
Yeah.
area. And I think they've realised that having
So
that as their only metric wasn't working, so they've gone to the participating thing now to try and work out. Because they'd gone off active priesthood holders, but they hadn't done participating adults and youth before. Carry on.
Yeah. So the number of active full tithe-paying Melchizedek priesthood holders capable of serving in leadership positions used to be in USA and Canada 180. Am I reading this right? This is like an eye test. And 120 in the rest of the world. So the new number is sort of between the two. Worldwide is now going to be 150.
Just going to stop you there, Peter, and invite the ladies to tell us what they think of this particular statistic. Who would like to go first? Ruth?
Well, they've got to measure something, haven't they? And I understand why, because they need to. Of that 150, which is the new number, they then need to divvy up stake callings that require a penis and ward callings that require a penis.
Indeed.
And so they've got to put a number on that. And what's interesting is that they are in no way concerned, because they don't need to be, because let's face it, most of the membership are women anyway. They are not concerned with putting a number next to how many women they need to run all of the auxiliaries, the primary, the Relief Society, the Young Women's, the seminary teachers, all of those. They don't need to put a number against that, because if they've got 150 blokes, they've probably got their wives and their daughters.
Well, it says capable of serving in leadership positions, and you have to be married often to serve in these positions.
You do, and you hope your wife is still, playing along. But it's almost a given, isn't it, that if we write 150 next to the men, we are going to anticipate the women, but we won't even give them the shout out to say, actually, wouldn't it be nice if we had some temple worthy attending, believing women in there as well?
It's easy maths to do, isn't it?
Come along, yeah.
You just go, right, okay, so we need a Relief Society president and 2 councillors. We need a Young Women's president and 2 councillors. We need a primary president and 2 councillors. Okay, so that's 9 in the wards. You got 5 wards. So that's some maths that I can't do. What's that, 45?
So I worked it out that for men it was about 11 per ward that needed the priesthood. And I think I didn't work it out for the women's side of it, because it's a bit more of a moving feast of how many primary classes you've got, and whether you're running a nursery with different age groups. But I think it's an interesting metric when you start to break it down then into wards, and we can go into that in a minute. But what's interesting when you look at the difference between the USA and Canada, it's a massive slashing of requirement of size
1,000.
to qualify to build a stake, and a massive slashing of how many priesthood holders that they require as well. It's a slight increase for the rest of the world, but not in any sense, a massive jump like 5% up or whatever. So yeah, just
which
really
I think shows the decline in the heartlands. Jane?
Yeah.
Well, I was just, well, first of all, some of the things that are being said in the chat, you all need to go see your bishops. I'm trying really hard to hold it together and not laugh, because whenever Ruth then mentioned about the church's need to measure things, the chat has inspired me to think that this maybe insecurity coming from the priesthood holders. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers initially thinking, okay, so we're bringing, worldwide, we're just sort of bringing everything into some kind of parity. That's wonderful. And then, oh, how I laughed, because Sarah and I were in the middle of talking when this was released, and literally what the UK could be a single stake now based on these numbers. It's just a bit kind, I'm reading it thinking, that's just never gonna be us. So I'm reading about growth, expecting, well, I guess we're going to be seeing more closures. We've already sort of been bracing ourselves for the next wave of what's going to happen here in the UK, and most certainly Scotland is going to be I think looked at next, and the rest of the British Isles. So yeah, I'm kind of waiting to see. Well, I mean, I think we're going to end up. Will we see the UK become one single mission? Will we see? I mean, certainly we're going to see wards, ward closures. I would imagine. I'm just hearing a death knell.
Well, I hope that my active believing friends and family are looking at this and going, well, why the hell are we having to carry on running at ward level, activities and doing all the doing, holding down 3 callings to make it work, when they're telling us we wouldn't even justify a ward nowadays. We certainly wouldn't justify a stake. And we're trying to do it all with our hands tied behind our back. Yeah. No wonder we're all stressed out. No wonder we're all falling on our knees all the time, because we just can't. You can't run the auxiliaries in that way when you have such low attendance and low participation. Because even when you've got good attendance, people are broken. So you can't ask them to do all the different callings. I hear a little bit of what's going on via my mum's friendship with some still attending members in her old ward. And, you've got 70-odd-year-olds who are serving in primary. It just is mind-boggling that they're asking, or they're the Young Women's President. And it just doesn't seem to occur to them to look at these figures and go, wow, maybe we're doing a bit too much. Maybe we shouldn't even be a ward anymore.
Bums on seats. If we took those number of total members, if we took that as like actual bums on seats, not just members of record, the UK has about 26,000 active members, people that are turning up on a Sunday, according to the leak from 2020. We don't know specifically how that has changed over COVID. We have some guesses, some ideas, but the leaked figures tell us that we had, we know it's gone down, we just don't know how much, but 27,697 is the exact figure as of 2020. That divided by the new 2000 figure means you should have 13 stakes in the UK instead of the current 40, which we used to have about 45, 44, and then we lost a load. Wow. So there's 13.8 stakes there. So rounded up, be generous, 14 stakes in the entirety of the UK. That's what we should actually have if you're going off number of members that are active rather than just number of members. However, and if you'll bear with me for just a second, UK Stats LDS, quick Google, go to the church newsroom. How many members do they say we actually have? They reckon we have 186,000. So we'll do a little bit of quick maths. 186,933 members divided by 2,000. Well, then we should have 93.4 stakes. So, and we have half of that. less than. We have 40. So what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Nemo's doing migraine maths. Well done,
yeah,
dude.
my brain
Give him
hurts.
money. He's suffering for this.
I've not been to church for a few years now, but I can't remember any time in at least the last decade as an active believing member that I attended a ward that had more than 120 regular attendees, regular participants, and that was at the highest point, sort of thing. That was in, if I go back further than that, maybe up to 150 in certain wards, including the children, counting everybody in a sacrament meeting. So by their new standards, would have struggled to hit the mark 10, 15 years ago. And we certainly, I'm hearing anecdotally 30 or 40 on a Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Is
So
very, very
should
common.
we move on to the next
Yeah.
the next slide, because that will tell us more about wards. All gone.
Well, before that, just
yes, we need to get
so
participating
adults didn't used to have a requirement. Now it's 500, and we've seen that definition. And then participating youth didn't used to be counted. Now it says 100 youth recommended.
So you don't actually have to have any
which
youth
means
to run
it's
a
not.
stake.
It doesn't count. And number of wards minimum is still going to be 5 as a minimum.
But Elder
which
Boom,
is fascinating.
yes, can I go on Elder Boom?
You
Boom came along.
You tell the story.
Well, Elder Boom came along, or Boom.
Yeah, Europe area.
I speak some Dutch, but I can never get his name right. Anyway, so he comes along, and when he's closing, I believe it was Watford stake, he goes, we made these stakes, and they had like 5 wards in them, and that's not really enough. So we're merging them so that the stakes will be stronger, and you'll have like the more standard sort of 9. But the church's requirement was always that you just needed 5. They were on requirement. It's just an indictment of how poor the quality of the wards were, that 5 wards wasn't enough to run a stake, and they now need 9 in the UK to run a stake. So this new requirement is still 5. The requirement hasn't changed, but they're having to combine stakes just to make them strong enough to have like 9 or 10 wards. Is it 12 wards that have ended up in Canterbury stake, the new Canterbury stake?
We got
Something
11.
like that. 11, right?
Yeah.
That's a big old, that's double the minimum requirement, and you're
lot.
just about operating.
Yeah.
But if you go from the minimum requirement for the wards by the new standards, 5 wards is not enough to justify a stake. You've got to have 5 big wards.
5 wards of 100 participating adults.
Yeah, you've got to have your 400 per ward. Where in the UK are you going to find that? Come on, people.
Preston, maybe. Chorley.
And I think
Mormon
only if
survey later.
Survey later on that Sunday, then you can count them all. And then you'd start to say, okay, well, if you divide the 2,000 by the 250 or whatever it is now, that gives you 8 wards. But then you start to work out, well, then how many Melchizedek priesthood holders does that give you across the ward and across the stake? And suddenly you're down to really quite tight margins to serve in those, if you have the 8 wards, to serve in the ward callings and fulfill the stake callings. Again, you end up in a situation where people are having to do more than one heavy duty calling to keep the wheels running on this global corporation that doesn't pay any of their volunteers. I do my day job and then I'll go and do this for you times 2 because you want to have this many wards and stakes open.
Just a crock of
And
nonsense.
just on that, I think can I really point out to our American members and British saints who don't know much about the history here. We haven't been growing steadily for 2 centuries, since the Mormon missionaries came here. In the 1960s, as soon as they went public with polygamy, the machine of convert baptisms here stopped. And up to the early 1900s, most members still emigrated to Utah. So we had to, in the 1960s, I think, I was finding some old Millennial Stars, which were the magazine of the British Mission. My granddad, John Bleakley, in Northern Ireland, was in the one elders quorum for the whole of Britain, and his elders quorum president was in Liverpool in England. So what I want people to always really understand is we grew like Topsy in just a few decades, while the rest of Britain lost its Christianity. So this narrative that because American churches are now declining, so obviously ours will, is complete nonsense. The Mormons grew really strong congregations that were thriving, and by the early 1990s were on the cusp of exponential growth. We were holding on to far more of our young people. You know, this is our generation, that we were those first teenagers and young adults to have a really strong program, and we were ready to go for it, and loads of us started going on missions. And it was at that point the internet came with the truth and destroyed it. But I want to really emphasize the fact that and our parents worked their socks off for a very short period of time, for the 60s, well, mainly the 1970s, 1980s. And we had these congregations. My congregation in Gravesend in North Kent had 150 going at its peak. We're now averaging around 30, maybe 40 on a good day. And that's typical of lots of other congregations going on. So we can do it with the right leadership and the right attitude, and not the current misery religion.
But Peter,
that's
we
being
don't have the
we
truth
can
anymore.
grow.
That we can't do it because
On that
we've
note,
now had
Yes,
the
it's
internet and we
tricky.
know it's not
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
So
On that
Yeah.
note about the size of your
I
ward,
just
Peter,
wanna- yeah,
can we go to
yeah.
the ward figures?
Exactly. There we go.
Here's the minimum required
So,
square
the
ward. Actually, before we go there,
current-
because
Oh,
stop, hold up.
what for
I would
press?
be remiss right now if I didn't ask those that are watching to like this video. And if you like this kind of content, consider subscribing so that you'll see the video I'm doing tomorrow, the live stream I'm doing tomorrow. Come along, get involved in the chat, where we're talking about abuse cases and how the church doesn't really mean it when they say that they abhor abuse and that, you know, they don't want that it's a sin and it's grievous and all that sort of stuff. They don't really mean it, that they don't tolerate it. So subscribe so you don't miss that. And if you like what I do, and you want to support my research and support everything that goes on and help me buy peppermint tea to make me feel better, then consider donating $10, $15 a month at the link below. Shameless plug over. I feel like a horrible, dirty capitalist. Peter, please read from the screen.
Nemo,
fine.
if you,
Yeah, I know.
I'm happy to plug for you.
All right, go on.
I think what we should be saying is, if you want to watch Nemo cringe while he asks for shamelessly asks for donations, please feel free to like and subscribe, because it's just entertaining every single time watching you cringe.
I never
It's
get
so
any better
British.
at it. I
No, it's brilliant.
it's wonderful.
I'm not
to
good
watch.
at it. But I can guarantee you that the money you send me, at least some of it will be used to buy jammy dodgers. That is my promise. Oh, and yes, I have a candle that you can buy if you actually want something for your money rather than just me rambling on the internet. There you are. That's delicious.
Positioning all things.
Yeah, go buy that from the Exmo Candle Company. Links in the description. It smells great. It makes a great Christmas gift. It's awesome. Right, let's move away from this, please, quickly, fast. Thank you. Right, how new minimum requirements to create a ward. Peter, please read them.
All right. Number of total members.
Oh, hang on.
US, Canada.
Tim Rathbone's just put the funniest comment. Nemo, buy an Airfix kit. I should buy an Airfix kit and then do a live stream of me making the Airfix kit while answering questions. Yeah, let's do.
Absolutely.
When I've run out of good
Be
content,
very British.
I'll do that. All right. Sorry, Peter. Carry on.
That will never happen then. Okay, number of total. I've been interrupted 5 times now. Number of total members. US and Canada. This is for awards. 300. Wow. Other which we've got. Loads of our awards have 300 on the list, as Jamie said earlier.
No, loads of them have 300 on the list, Jay. They do.
They-
None of them are in the pews.
Yeah, and
They
as
do,
AJ
they do.
points out, which I love
Yeah.
the comment in the chat earlier on, they can only be seen with your spiritual eyes, because you certainly won't see them on Sundays. These are people who are on the list, and
No, they're on the list.
that is it. That they are
No,
on
but
a
seriously,
list.
that's how. This is how bad the complete screw up of missionary work has been for decades, because they've baptized multitudes. They baptized enough for every ward to be stakes, and in lots of areas, but they haven't kept them, and that's the curse, mainly through stupidity. Anyway, so Jacob was saying, his heart sank when he was looking at ward lists once. Maybe it was on his mission, and there were only 40 active, but there were 500 on the ward list. Anyway, so it was 300, 150 in the rest of the world. So now the threshold is going to be mostly the high one. It's going to be 250 total members to have a ward. Although that sounds a lot, well, loads of us have got that. So that's not so, there are stakes teeming with huge numbers of ward lists who are nearly all inactive. So that's not necessarily going to be, so that, while we look at that being really high and indicating success, that's not a hard number to come by where the church has been established for a while. The number of active full tithe-paying Melchizedek priesthood holders capable of serving leadership positions used to be USA and Canada 20, other countries 15. It's now up to the 20 threshold.
Which makes no sense. We need to talk about that, but it makes no sense. Because
I've got thoughts.
Just finish
that now, or shall I just finish the other two numbers?
Yeah, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. So participating adults didn't used to count. Now they want 100 meeting that criteria of participating adults. That's the difficult one. And participating youth didn't used to count, and now it'll be 20 recommended, so it doesn't really count. But an imaginary number of 20 participating youth, which won't actually affect the final decision.
Yeah.
It
makes no sense that they've increased the number of Melchizedek priesthood holders, because this is all about standardizing the church across the world, right? So how many do you need to have a viable stake? You need enough to fill all the or a ward. You need enough to fill all the priesthood positions. So it's interesting that it's capable of serving in leadership positions. So certain individuals aren't capable of serving as a bishop, like a missionary, but a missionary can serve as a branch president. So if one of the Melchizedek priesthood holders you have access to is a missionary, he doesn't count when it comes to creating a ward. So you've got a branch on your hands. Anyway, and we've seen that in the UK. There are branches now where a missionary is the branch president because they cannot find anyone that is capable of serving in that position. It's getting bad over here. But anyway, so you need that plus a small kind of overflow, just so that you have someone else to call as bishop after 7 years, or however long that goes on for these days. So why on earth they would bring the number up when they have got rid of young men's presidencies, they have got rid of high priest groups and group leadership. So they've eliminated Melchizedek priesthood callings in the ward, and yet they've popped the number up somehow. And again, Matthew Allen with the great comment, wow, look how much the church needs women. Yeah. So, Ruth, you said you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So several thoughts. So firstly, just recognizing the correlation between the numbers there. So you have got, it used to be for the other countries that we fall under, that it was 15 Melchizedek priesthood holders to 150 total members, so a 1 to 10 ratio. We're now at 20 to 250, so 1 to 12 and a half, something like that ratio, which means as a Melchizedek priesthood holder, you are going to be, although the number's gone up, you will be spread more thinly. And then also, if you look at that 250 total members, you only need participating adults of 100, of which 20 need to be Melchizedek priesthood holders. So there's 80 participating members who can be, women and children, basically, that will be counted as participating members, as long as you've got that magic 20 Melchizedek priesthood holders. The remaining 150 can be as flaky as they like. It doesn't really matter what they are. It's like casting the nativity, isn't it? We can have as many shepherds and donkeys as we like, really. We just need the magic 20 number of Melchizedek priesthood holders to be able to get us over the line. But those Melchizedek priesthood holders, remember, are the same ones that are also then counted again at a stake level. Yes. And the reason why it's gone up on the ward level, in my opinion, is because they're recognizing the fact that they are going to have to call on them at stake level, because they haven't got the same person can't be used twice over there. So the wards are going to be that bit more pressed. If you have got a ward of 250 plus, you potentially, as a Melchizedek priesthood holder, are going to be asked to go and serve and do lots and lots of things. But also, you're probably going to be doing estate calling. And that takes you away from your family on a Sunday, gives you extra obligations during the week. I know I'm painting a bleak picture, but the women are not in this, but the women are an invisible thread running through this, keeping all those other plates spinning, because the blokes are off doing a load of nonsense stuff midweeks, Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, Saturday mornings for breakfast, whatever it is they get up to, and Sunday callings.
Jane, your thoughts?
Amen, Ruth. That's, yeah, exactly.
Solid. Peter, your thoughts?
I'm just thinking about how many of our wards wouldn't count as wards anymore if they applied this now. You know, that technically so many of our wards should be downgraded to branch
Right.
size, which has very small requirements. The numbers for a branch out in the mission field is tiny. 4 priesthood holders, with 1 active Melchizedek priesthood tithe payer. And in a stake, the threshold for a branch is 20 members, whether active or not, and 4 Melchizedek tithe payers who can lead. So there's quite a big difference, you know, between the threshold for a branch and a ward. The ward opposite us across the Thames Estuary got demoted to branch level in before the recent stake mergers. I'm not sure what's happened to it now. Grays.
Which ward's that?
But
Gravesend?
that has actually happened. Grays
Grays.
ward,
Grays ward.
Grays in Essex. Yeah. So
now Grays.
before the stake mergers, that Romford stake, as it was, downgraded them to a ward because they just couldn't find the leadership that they needed.
And I'm
to
hearing
branch.
rumours of several other units in the UK becoming branches in the near future, or wards becoming merged. I won't leak any of that now at the moment, because the people that told me have asked me not to say anything, so I'll respect that. But I will say that I am hearing reports.
And and can I just say the logic for that, I think, is geographical. Obviously, the sensible thing is to merge wards to keep large congregations. But after a certain point, people can't travel that far.
Especially when your ward is
already
aging
really
and getting
big.
elderly.
Yes, and they can't drive, or they use public transport or whatever. So ultimately, that is the future. It's going to be branches because people simply won't be able to travel to the 30-mile away.
We've got Jane's hand going up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that we 21st century saints wouldn't be as if we didn't somehow manage to shoehorn some safeguarding stuff in
go on
here.
then.
But none of this discussion here involves the safe running of a ward or a stake. When we're looking at how something is going to run safely, people who are not men must be involved, and there have to be procedures that don't involve married people, who are sort of there to tick boxes, or effectively women are just called to look after each other's children. I mean, that's what's happening at the moment. There have to be people who are not men, and for us to be approaching the safe running of new wards through that lens. Again, this is sort of thought about. Once we can sort of staff it, we've got all of the, priesthood holders who have to fill those roles. Once that's all done, well, that's really all that matters. One of the fundamental things that has to be looked at first is how can we have a ward and a stake function safely? And that is to have not just men. We have to have people who are not men.
I think one of the interesting things about the whole safeguarding process that obviously the UK has been on, that journey, has been highlighting how much they don't think about these things, that the drivers for doing things have never been, is this safe? Is this wise? Is this within our capacity and capabilities as a unit to actually do safely and for the best interest of those involved, even down to the stress and the mental health and the financial stability of people when they're asked to do certain things. We've all been in that position where you look back and go, that was actually quite dangerous. Locking up late at night in quite a rough area, that was probably quite dangerous for me to do that. Taking a bunch of kids in a car, on a long road trip when I don't know their parents' contact details, that's probably not a sensible, wise thing to do. And you only look back on those things. The church as an organization has a absolute duty and has the wherewithal, the money, and they've certainly got the lawyers to put in place the robust sort of procedures and policies that we need to stop people going past those safe boundaries, let alone safeguarding, let alone abuse, but just the things that are safe and for themselves when they're actually serving, to kind of go, actually, it's not wise for you, Bishop, to be there at 7 a.m. unlocking.
Well,
we've got a close family who something dreadful really happened to them.
yes, I was going to bring up that a bishop in the UK was assaulted, put in a coma, trying to unlock a building. It's yeah.
And those things happen, and we don't learn from them. What the church tried to do was send a film crew to capitalize on that tragedy.
Oh, and they started putting up fences around buildings and telling women they couldn't go and unlock buildings.
Instead of actually saying to bishops and people across the country, do you know what? Why don't we let's put some safeguarding in place so that you're safe, so that we're not asking you to do something that's perhaps a little bit putting you at risk. And I think when it comes to actually structuring the wards and the stakes and thinking about those numbers, that again needs to be part of the thought process.
Okay, so I want to bring us back to the original question. If I can work out how to use the internet. There we go. Can this save Mormonism? Can all these changes, will they save the church? I appreciate all 250 of you who have been sitting with us throughout all this. It's been really good. I know we have a ward. Yes, Ruth, we have a ward. Yes, we have a ward in the chat. So, hey everyone, let me know how many of you are. Well, how many of these people are actually meaningfully participating, though? That's what I want to know. Are you meaningfully participating? Here's my set of criteria. You have to like, subscribe. Yeah,
pay your tithing.
That's what I want you to do, so that you can be considered to be meaningfully participating in our little YouTube ward right now. Yeah, but I've been drinking my peppermint tea. I feel a lot better. My headache is gone. You've all lifted my spirits tonight, so thank you very much. I've really enjoyed being here, and I just want to get final thoughts. Can these changes that are designed to certainly save the church reputationally, if nothing else, will they meaningfully uplift the church? I want to start with Peter, because then I can cut him off with someone
else.
else.
The number of stakes increased between 2018 and 2022, so over 4 years.
Yeah.
Only by 0.66% or something, which was by 138 stakes, which is tiny out of a total of 3,521. In that time, they shifted 30 districts, disappeared. So some of that was just renaming districts as stakes. My sense of things is all of this is simply about creating the illusion of growth by making things worse. Mm-hmm. So what this is going to mean is that the 40% or so of congregations or members that are in the USA, they can keep halving their stakes and shrinking the number of wards in their stakes. So they start to have the problems that we've been having here of not having enough people and people having 3 callings, in order to keep that total rising still, while they're having to merge and close stakes in the rest of the world. So they're making basically the Utah members suffer because of our catastrophically falling numbers. While at the same, as we heard, the message we're getting here is it's stupid to have a stake of 5 wards, and because that's not big enough, and they're growing and growing our stakes by smushing them together. This is a temporary measure. My worry and deep concern is it creates the illusion of growth. We just had our first 11 ward stake meeting, and they're all kind of excited because it looks like things are bigger because our stake just doubled in size, when actually it's an indicator of catastrophic dropping of numbers. And I'm really frustrated because my game plan for, if there is an epiphany for the middle managers to start voting opposed, they need to be staring into the abyss of loss. And this has bought the church a few more years. It looks like growth when your stake got bigger, even though actually it's shrinking. And bothers me that this is going to delay that moment of epiphany and desperation that they need to have if they're ever going to turn it around.
Sorry,
Which
I
they
just
probably
want to
won't, as
share.
we all agree.
Kerry B has just put an excellent comment. I'm a never mo. Does that mean I was just converted without informed consent? Wow, I really do feel like part of the family now. Welcome. We are inclusive to
That's how we
all.
do things.
That's how we roll.
Yeah.
Jane, can I get your thoughts on can this save the church? Will it?
So I think really good conversations were probably had around how to make the church more balanced worldwide. I think it came from a positive place. I don't sort of see any.
You're so lovely, Jane.
I don't really believe they're looking at trying to formally hide the numbers because, I mean, something comes up. I just, do you know what? I don't. Because it's
but thank you.
Christmas. It's
Christmas. Yeah.
And yeah, you all need to think positively and light the world.
Mm.
But I do think what they needed to do was to rip up the rule, but they're bringing in these new policies and still holding on to effectively 19th century ways of trying to operate a church. Well, it doesn't work like that anymore. You need to get a hell of a lot more creative than you are doing. It's certainly not going to make any sort of real terms difference in the UK other than possibly make things worse, because we are expecting things are going to close, realign. It will come with its own set of problems there. So it's not going to save Mormonism as such, but it could if just you have time to walk this back and be much more creative about how you do it. And let's have a 21st century a 21st century church that is able to just all be 21st century saints. That's how you do it. That's able to actually respond to the kind of church that people are looking for. That's why we were structured in the way that we were.
You know what's mad is that we're a church that believes in continuous and ongoing revelation. We have the formula for being the antithesis of conservative and traditionalist, small c conservative traditionalist, not wanting to change. We have it baked into the system that the prophet at any point can go, well, we're just going to do things differently now.
Exactly. Exactly. And that beginning statement of the letter, what does participation mean? What is personhood in the church? It's the elderly people who have been there their whole lives and have tithed their whole lives and do not any longer hold meaningful callings because they physically can't do it, that their contributions have been made over their lives that don't even count on that list. It's Peter, whose name will never appear on that list because although he turns up every week and participates, he is not considered a person in these numbers. And people like Peter, people in the community who could benefit from interaction in the church, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go get baptized and make a lifetime commitment to a religion that you don't want to affiliate to. There are so many things that we could do, and that could save the church. Now, the other thing that I think could save Mormonism, especially worldwide and here in the UK, is buying Nemo the Mormon t-shirts. I would suggest go do that for Christmas. It will either drive members of the church crazy or you will bond with your people. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Ruth, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that I can see why they've done this, and I think it is a rationalization, and it's allowed them to take a deep breath in America and Canada, where they're struggling very much in the heartlands, and also create some structure around how they, the justification for wards and states going forward. What I hope when we're thinking about boundaries is that members in the UK, this allows them to set some boundaries and allows them to go, if we, little band of 30, would not even justify a ward, I can say no. I can say I can do this much and no more. I can give this much of my time and my family's time and no more. And I do it with love, and I do it with all of my heart and my faith. But I'm going to set a healthy boundary because that's within me to do, to say this is where I can sit, and I now know what the numbers are, so I know that I'm working within the capacity that should be expected of me if I'm only 40 out of a potential 250 that would be needed to justify the creation of a new ward. So I hope it allows for some new boundaries to be set in people's hearts and minds in the UK. Can it save Mormonism? No, because the internet came along. Mormonism is an interesting concept of Christianity, but I think that ship sailed a long time ago. But I do. Can it save Mormons? I hope it saves them some mental anguish, and I hope it saves some families and some relationships, because it allows them to actually go, I'm doing enough, and that's all I can do. Especially the elder members.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you to I announced this live stream by saying literally one person asked me to look at this when it came out. Someone tagged me on Reddit and said, please cover this. And I was like, all right, okay, I will. And I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. I'll bring you back up on screen again. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Thank you to our excellent ward of 275 people who have been with us. If you want to be considered a active and a meaningfully participating member of this ward, make sure you hit like on your way out. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'll see you tomorrow night for another live stream. Take care, everyone. Let's see if I can end this live stream